What's going on, everybody? It is Monday, January 8th, 2024, day log episode over NQ. So if you attended the live stream today, I walked everybody through price and what unfolded in real time. Unfortunately, there was really no entries for me. I talked about in the Silver Bullet Hour, it's really the main focus of the live streams and creating that discipline and the rule set around it. So touching on what I was annotating yesterday, I just want to bring the attention back out to the monthly time frame. So this inversion, fair value gap, we've had a really nice rejection away from it. Weekly time frame as well. Look at the BISI here and the reaction away from it today. Really nice displacement away. Look at the daily time frame. Reacted off the fair value gap I was annotating yesterday. And then looking at even the CE of this wick here. So look at how price respected the 50% the equilibrium. So anytime you have like a wick of a previous day, you can annotate that, especially if you're reacting off of a, PD array as well. Reacting off the wick and reacting off the premium level of that fair value gap. And you've seen the displacement higher today. We closed above, there was a fair value gap here. So if anything, this should act as a level of support or inversion, right? Because this was a SIBI and then we closed above it. Do I see price retracing all the way back down into that? No. Preferably, I'd like price to trade through this SIBI in here, but there's a couple things that today kind of did that might tip its hand. We have CPI, and we don't have any economic news driver events tomorrow and Wednesday leading up until CPI. And I typically don't like Monday as being the low of the week profile. Not saying it can't happen. It is a profile and it does occur often, but I don't like when if I'm looking for a overall bullish template for the week, right? What we were looking at yesterday, I would prefer the low of the week being set on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, right? This was set right from the jump. So it just makes me weary of the idea of like, let me flip the other side of the argument. Did price just trade up into a premium from that dealing range high to this low, trade up into the SIBI and this breaker here? I'll show you on the 4-hour chart. Did it just trade up into that premium fair value gap of the premium breaker? And then do we see a displacement away from it? So the only thing, or I guess the few things that would counter this bearish argument would be the weekly time frame and the monthly, because those are both parent to the daily. So they supersede the daily, right? So they take more significance. Actually put this back on. So the fact that the monthly is higher, right? It's in a hierarchy than the daily, and we're reacting off of that inversion, setting the low of the month, overall bullish. Looking at the weekly time frame, we've dipped down into that fair value gap in here. We have a bullish SMT. The fact that the weekly and the monthly are the parent, right? It's when you level it in hierarchy, these are more important. So I'm looking at this side of the argument because it is on a daily time frame, and I'm looking at the idea of just being open-minded. Again, the trading is all about weighing decisions and gaining, looking at each side of the argument and seeing which one has more evidence. I talk about this constantly because that's what you're doing as an analyst. You're constantly going back and forth with, weighing options, weighing decisions, and making sure that you're choosing the correct side. And you do that by, being a detective. You're looking for evidence. You're looking for clues. So right now, I'm going to just have to play it by day and session and what evidence is giving to me in that real time, in that real setting. Because in here, we've dropped down into optimal trade entry. We've displaced higher. Nice reaction away from the discount fair value gap in here. It may run through these bearish PD arrays if we are truly bullish, right? Looking at the 4-hour time frame, I traded up into a premium SIBI here. Just because you trade up into a bearish PD array or vice versa with a bullish doesn't automatically make it bullish or bearish. It has to be aligned with narrative, which I just talked about on higher time frame. Where should price draw into? on this 4-hour chart, we've dropped down into a discount breaker. We've seen a nice reaction away from it. I talked about on the 4-hour chart today. Go back on the live stream. We drop down into this rejection block here, into the bullish breaker again. Look at the bodies, the way they're respecting it. And we displaced higher to attack what? The relative equal highs resting there. Okay, so we've traded up into that SIBI. What would make a kind of an invalid bullish scenario? Well, particularly I would like this inefficiency to be held if we're going to continue higher. Overnight, if we drop down into that, it'd be a fairly good expectation that we should run higher if all things are aligned. We've traded up into this SIBI as well, annotated on the live stream. And then there's one above it. See there. And there's not as clear as inefficiencies on the 1 hour as the 4-hour. There's one resting in there that I'm kind of vying. I'm going to need more evidence. And what that means is I need to wait for a little bit more time. I need to see overnight session. I need to see leading up into pre-New York. Sometimes, again, I'm just being the flip side argument, devil's advocate. Sometimes with Monday, you'll see a rapid run like this. Let's just play it, bearish scenario. This would be setting the high of the week. You trap a lot of people going long, and then they drop it heavily during CPI, and we drop lower. But there needs to be certain things in there. That's not obviously 100%, correct analysis. But you're in one of those situations, especially on the daily, where I could potentially see both scenarios. I'm going to lean on the bullish idea because I think there's more evidence for it. But I'm going to keep that open mind because if things start to switch and there's evidence printing to the other side, at least I'm ready. I'm prepared. Today, everything was basically outlined. Relative equal highs were the focus, even going into last night. If you watch the weekly forecast, these were the main focus going into the week. So beautifully met. You could see in here, dropping down overnight, taking out sell side liquidity, returning into a rejection block here. So this last up close candle, this one is the rejection block. Just met the close there, or at least the open on this. Displaced higher, dropped down into a fair value gap overnight, drove higher, order block, displaced higher again. What is this? A bullish breaker. We have a low, a high, a lower low, then a higher high. So this last up close beefy candle is your bullish breaker. Inside of all of that, there was also a new week opening gap, and there was a new day opening gap that was resting in here as well. So that was both in confluence. Fair value gap in here. Displaced away from it, dropped down into a bullish order block, new week opening gap, and then the open was right about here, and we were just off to the races. And there was practically no entries. In hindsight, all of this is easy to see and be like, man, I could have positioned myself down here and held all the way up into that fair value gap. I've talked about how on the live stream, live conditions are so much different, and you can't read price when you're back testing or even looking at old price. You can't look at it through the lens of, I would have been in position in here, I would have been positioned in there. Ideally, of course, yes, but in hindsight, it's going to be a lot different. I think today, when we opened on the 1 minute time frame, we displaced higher in here, and then we dropped down to a small fair value gap. I think that was really the best option. In hindsight, obviously I wish I took that, but I was really trying to aim for the silver bullet as the kind of main focus for the live stream, and ultimately we ran out the target before the silver bullet opened, because by the time silver bullet happened, we've already ran out the buy side liquidity. And that's going to happen. That's part of your rules and discipline is, sometimes it's a bitch, and you obviously are exercising that discipline, and it's not something you don't want to miss these moves, but it's, part of what you're exercising. And if you stay within these boundaries, eventually it's going to be a pro for you, because at times there's going to be, for the first 30 minutes, a super sloppy range. It's back and forth, and it's undecisive, and you're happy that you followed that discipline because you saved yourself losses. So don't beat yourself up when you're following your rules and your discipline and it's not working in your favor, because on the contrary, there's going to be times when it really does work in your favor, and that's when you need to be following it. You can't be, one day you're following it, one day you're not. You need to be consistent with your rule following, right? So by the time silver bullet came, this blue line, I was annotating this fair value gap in here, but I was electing to kind of wait for maybe a 5-minute or a 15-minute to be dropped down into. And that was for numerous factors. I was going to see if we could drop down into this lower fair value gap, which we did not, and just slowly grinded higher. Just slowly grinded higher. I saw a few people tweeting at me and things like that. If they were looking at this Sibian here, and this is where, sticking with the narrative is such a higher probability than trying to reverse the narrative or even trying to pick a top, because in here you could see you would have gotten burnt on that eventually. So if you just stayed with the bullish narrative, and I think you could have done all right. Even throughout lunch hour, super bullish, drop down into this fair value gap again, displaced higher, and it's just slow grinding higher. When we're up inside of this much of a premium, we've been long all day with, very little run on sell stops. It's harder for me to operate in these conditions. If I had to be completely honest, I don't operate, or I don't do well in super bullish or bearish days. It's just through history. It's something that I can obviously improve upon, but it's harder for me to trust price because I do want some type of run on sell stops or buy stops. I would like some type of discount or premium to be met. So there's going to be conditions that, in profiles that you may operate a lot better in. I'm surprisingly actually a lot better inside of consolidations, because there's a lot of just run on sell stops or buy stops, and it's just a little bit easier for me to trust, I guess. So you have to find what works best for you. One last thing, this is the current new week opening gap down here. We have a previous one there, second previous, and then a third previous. So ICT says to have basically about 4 old or current new week opening gaps on your chart, and the indicators over here. So these are basically like a ladder system to me, the way I look at it, or just magnets. If we get above this new week opening gap and it just continues to press higher, then I'm going to be looking at this old new week opening gap, and then this one as well. It's a little bit wider, seems like a little bit better magnet. If we reach into that old new week opening gap, I'm fairly confident we're going to just make new all-time highs this year. Let me cover dollar index real quick, because I talked about that last night. Beautiful reaction off of the fair value gap here and the bearish order block. So that was coming off of last week, and I talked about the idea that we could potentially just run away from it. Looking at the daily time frame, not the best closure today, if I had to be completely honest. Still a little bit indecisive. I don't like this wick in here from last Friday. We could possibly run down in this fair value gap and then spike higher. You have to be aware with CPI this week, things may not be as high probability. There may be some manipulation that's going to be happening. So just be aware of it. Tomorrow, watch this fair value gap there, and refine that on the 1 hour as well. FYI, tomorrow I'm not going to be live streaming, unfortunately, in the morning. Some family matters came up, and I got to take care of it. So I may do a silver bullet in the PM session just to kind of get a live stream in tomorrow. So I'll keep everybody updated on Twitter. With that being said, appreciate all you watching, tuning into live streams. Till tomorrow, good luck and good trading, everybody. Be safe.